So let's talk. First of all, if you are new here and you've never heard me speak before, welcome. I know many of you have gotten to discover Brave Writer over the last year during all the places I've spoken, whether it was in Texas or California or Florida, or maybe Alaska or New Zealand, or most recently in Tennessee. Maybe you came to the Brave Learner Conference in July here in Cincinnati. I am thrilled to make your acquaintance. And I am equally thrilled to welcome all the old timers, everybody who follows me on YouTube or follows along on Instagram. So we are thrilled to have you here. I like to do Facebook Lives. I like to do Zoom meetings as a way to connect to the audience. So I hope you'll share these with your friends. If they have questions, all of these are always free. And it gives you an opportunity to let your friends in on why Brave Writer or why the Homeschool Alliance, our coaching community, are good places for you to hang out. So today what we're going to talk about is homeschooling through the holidays. Now, something that I think is ironic, of course, is that we're talking about the holidays and it's only the beginning of October. Naturally, the real holiday season kicks off sort of at the end of October and then into November, and then by December, we're all just completely overtaken. So I wanted to prepare you for it because one of the things that I've noticed is that when October hits, a lot of times in anticipation for that holiday period, we start to buckle down. We act a little bit tight-fisted around the homeschooling. Like, we've got to get it in. I've got to be done before your grandmother arrives in mid-November. We've got Halloween coming, or end of the fall experiences like fall festival. And so we sort of buckle down, and we can kind of suck the life out of learning because we're so in that mode of wanting to make sure that we get everything done before Christmas or before Hanukkah or before New Year's. So what I want to talk about today is a way to sort of let go, trust the process of the fall, and actually make use of the holidays to help you feel that you are actually making the progress you crave academically with your kids. There are 3 principles that I'd like to share with you that I think will be valuable for this holiday season. And the first one is less is more. Less is more. What do I mean by that? I mean that sometimes when we get frantic, we actually think more is more. We're going to do more reading. We're going to do more math in anticipation of when we'll do less. We're going to load up, stock up, make sure we cover more material because we see this longer experience of vacation coming, and we don't want to squander the opportunity to be halfway through the year by the end of December. That's how a lot of people think in the Northern Hemisphere. Now, I realize if you're in New Zealand or Australia, you'll be heading into the summer holidays. So this may be less true for you right now, but just keep this in mind for any time you have a holiday season. So what I want you to anticipate now is not trying to load up at the front end so that then you can finally relax. I want to invite you to think about a principle that could guide you through all of it. Less is more. What do I mean by that? It means less quantity, but more deep diving, more quality. So let me give you an example. Let's say that your family really enjoys celebrating Halloween. I know not everybody does, but our family loved it. We loved trick-or-treating. We loved dressing up. We loved going into the neighborhood. And there is a certain amount of energy that goes with finding a costume, making a costume, thinking about the costume. There's a little fantasy piece that goes with Halloween, that goes with trick-or-treating. And so you might be seeing that coming up and thinking, okay, how do I make time for this experience and not let it shipwreck my studies? Here's where I would say less is more. Instead of treating Halloween like an add-on, treat it like it's an important part of your fall curriculum. So you don't have to necessarily turn it into the dreaded unit study where it might feel like you're turning something pleasurable into school. But on the flip side, talking about what character your child might want to dress up as, what person, what personality, can lead to some really interesting places. So let's say that you have a child who wants to be Steph Curry, you know, the basketball star. That is his obsession. Well, you could watch Steph Curry play. You could have your child make the jersey Look at the number and ask questions like, what is the number on the jersey for? How do they pick their numbers? Is there some story behind the number? You could do a little bit of a deep dive into research about Steph Curry. And the reason that that could be valuable as a less is more kind of strategy for the fall is you don't know yet where it will lead. I was talking last night with my boyfriend about the baseball playoffs. And right now, baseball and football are going full board, and the basketball season is just starting, and so is hockey. So October is this massive sports month. And one of the things I notice in baseball in particular is their obsession with math. They talk about the distance the ball goes, the percentage of hits that go a certain distance, hit in the middle or the right or the left of the field. They talk about the percentage of hits that a player makes in the playoffs versus the regular season. They talk about percentage of pitches and lefties versus righties. I mean, it's insane. In fact, we had a debate the other night about whether or not an overhand throw from second to first base gets there faster if you throw it as a bounce toss, if you bounce the ball on the way to first, or if you throw it without bouncing. And of course, I took the position that the unimpeded throw would be faster than a bounce throw. Well, amazingly, we looked this up on the internet. My boyfriend thought the bounce throw would be faster. I said, no way, friction's going to slow it down. Me, the big physicist, right? The next thing you know, I find an article that went on at length, I mean pages, about analyzing bounce throws versus overhand non-bounce throws. And do you know what we discovered? It has to do with how low the trajectory of the throw is. And in some cases, the bounce throw actually is faster than an overhand throw. So what you discover when you deep dive, when you do this less is more principle, is you are leading yourself into all kinds of territory related to the subjects you're trying to teach. So let's get back to Steph Curry. Couldn't we ask about percentage throws in basketball? How far out his percentage starts dropping? He makes an insane number of three-pointers. Couldn't we look at, well, where is his best three-point percentage and start analyzing why that's true? This is all in preparation for Halloween, but it's just interesting. It's just taking something your child already cares about and playing with it, asking really good questions, helping it emerge as a less is more opportunity. How it might actually tie into math or tie into literature or tie into his passion. Now, let's say you have a daughter and she is enamored with one of her favorite Disney princesses, and that's who she wants to be for Halloween. We could talk about making the costume versus buying the costume. We could watch the movie that features the princess. We can talk about the fairy tales that story is drawn from and read some of those fairy tales. We might take a look at the antagonist in that story and ask a meaningful question like, you want to be the princess. Let's say she wants to be the Little Mermaid. We could start talking about why she isn't drawn to being Ursula. Or could she play Eric if she wanted to? And actually look at this as a discussion around literature. Who's the antagonist? Who is the protagonist? Who's the love interest? What roles can any of us play? Is it okay to make believe in any kind of character, any gender, any type of character? These are conversations you could be having that actually advance the goals you have for your school subjects, but that are tied into the sort of anticipation, curiosity, and energy that would be going into a holiday. Now, of course, we've only just started with Halloween, and we've got Thanksgiving coming, and then a series of holidays coming in December. So that allows me to go into my next principle. So the first one was less is more. Allow yourself to deep dive meaningfully around whatever the holiday is, okay? Feel free to examine it in many ways. And we're going to talk about how to do that in just a moment. In addition to Halloween, you might have Fall Festival, All Hallows Eve, Dia de la Muerte. These are all October and early November experiences that I invite you to play with, that you in your family may be interested in. I remember before we go on to the go slow to go fast, I had one more thought. My daughter, Johanna, currently lives in Mexico. And so they do Dia de los Muertos. I know I'm saying this wrong. So those Spanish speakers, please correct me in the chat. They do this every year where they have a feast where they honor those who've gone before them, those who've died in their families. One of the ways that you could honor that in your family, Dia de los Muertos, thank you, Elena, is to create a little altar, a space, a bookshelf that includes all the pictures of people that you love from your family and your community that have passed on, and honor them. Spend an evening telling stories about them, remembering them. You may have to do a little research. You know, I know who my grandparents are and I know where they raised my mother, but do I know where they were born? Do I still have children of theirs, my parents, aunts, uncles, where I could ask some questions about things I haven't learned yet that would be meaningful to share? So using the holidays as a way to investigate. Elena shares that marigolds, sugar skulls, candles, and watching Coco, the Pixar movie, right? Or is it Disney, or both? Pixar and Disney are the same, aren't they? But yes, Coco, oh, so amazing. So you can create an opportunity to actually incorporate the holiday right into the center of your learning, not adjacent, but as an opportunity to look at all the subjects. So let's now talk about going slow to go fast. So one of the things I wanted to show you in my book, The Brave Learner, is something I call the continent of learning, the continent of learning. And it looks like this. The idea is this: in the center of your page, you will pick a topic. So in the book, the example I use is playing the piano. But here you could put Dia de los Muertos, you could put Halloween, you could put Thanksgiving, you could put Kwanzaa, right in the center. And then your job is to discover all the ways that that holiday actually relates to the school subjects. So we've already talked a little bit about Steph Curry and sports, or Disney princesses in Halloween, ways that you can draw in a little bit of history, a little bit of cultural understanding, a little bit about math, a little bit about biography, a little bit about literature. All of those things happen when we treat this as a less is more, we deep dive. But now, to maximize, we want to go slow to go fast. What do I mean by that? A lot of times we're in a hurry. We think if we do more, we'll get more out of it. If we hurry, we'll cover more territory. And what I'm saying is, when you go slow, you deep dive, you patiently look for the connections around the thing that is important to your family, you will discover that learning accelerates. Your children suddenly start retaining what you are sharing with them because it has a meaningful context. It's something that can attach to the hooks in their imagination. So let's take Thanksgiving now, American Thanksgiving, as our next example. What would it look like to go slow to go fast? Well, it would mean not saying the planning of Thanksgiving until 2 days before Thanksgiving, you know, the habit many of us have. It would mean maybe right now, forecasting for your children, you know, Thanksgiving's coming. Who's coming this year? And maybe making a list, putting it on a whiteboard somewhere, and allowing the imagination to keep thinking about, wow, grandma's coming, my aunt is coming, my cousin is coming, my neighbor is coming, or we're going to a family's house, we're going to the soup kitchen to help, we're going to support this organization in their Thanksgiving practice. But you create it in the imagination by featuring it already, letting it live in a place where everybody remembers it. Now, you might think, let's say you're hosting. You might, in a week or two, say, it'd be really cool, wouldn't it, to have place cards that represent all the people coming to our home? Who wants to be in charge of notes to Aunt Marge? Are there any Marges left? So then you have little Chloe says, I want to be in charge of Aunt Marge. She's always so nice. She always smells like peppermint. And then you say, oh, that's true. Okay, well, let's think about a beautiful place card, something you could handwrite and color and make beautiful for her. Where's she going to stay? What can we do to make her stay special? Is there a poem from Poetry Tea Time that we might want to copy and leave in her room? Would it be nice to give Aunt Marge a picture she can take home of all the kids together in the fall. Like, you can start actually building a framework for your Thanksgiving experience instead of it sneaking up on you and then you just pell-mell figure it out at the last minute. Because all of this is education. All of it goes to the need of your child to grow as a human being. Now, maybe you don't focus on the interpersonal. Maybe that really isn't it. For us, we rarely had anyone have Thanksgiving with us because we lived alone in Ohio and our whole family was in California. So typically it was just our family. But I remember one year, Katrin really got into the American Girl hand lettering sets. So we made hand lettered place cards for the whole family that included little pumpkin drawings, and it took time. You know, we collected leaves. We planned in advance what the foods would be, and we even tested some of the recipes. And the kids learned how to participate in the making of the food. We studied a few things about Thanksgiving, like what's the real history versus what's the story. I mean, the real history has multiple perspectives. There's not a real history, but there is a more official account that you can find if you look for how it's studied in graduate school or how historians talk about Thanksgiving versus the story that we tell ourselves. We might even discover some new ideas around what it means to honor that day. Is there something about the way the Native American story fits into that holiday that we could honor in a new way? So as you see the holidays coming, instead of just seeing them as this huge burden that is usually on your female shoulders to pull off, right? Because that's what most of us experience. How can we actually co-opt our children into that experience with us and maximize it for learning, allowing it to be a catalyst for some of the learning we want our kids to do? Now, I remember one year when my kids were really small, I had taken out the E.D. Hirsch books, some of which have fallen a bit into disrepute, but he had, you know, what every kindergartner should know, what every first grader should know. And I used to page through them just to remind myself of things I had forgotten. So I remember the year that I realized we had never learned the song Yankee Doodle Dandy, My Country 'Tis of Thee. Didn't even realize that that song was a ripoff of God Save the Queen. And it just provided us with some new ways to interact with American history and story that I had forgotten. We also, I think one year read Johnny Tremaine just to kind of do the colonial aspect of life. And we watched Pocahontas on endless loop. Now, I'm not saying that all of those are accurate depictions of history, but it created a container for a conversation that continued for years. So I recommend that. That's going slow to go fast. Because if you slowly encounter Thanksgiving over time leading up to it, whether it's from hosting your family or thinking about it historically or preparing the meals or relishing the fall or tying it to early American history, you will discover that over those slow attempts to think about it, Thanksgiving itself will come together for you much more easily. That's what I mean by going slow to go fast. Your patient attention to it allows you to put it together right at the end. Another way to think about going slow to going fast then is thinking about December. And there are quite a few holidays that occur at the end of the year. Now, Ramadan for Muslims is no longer in December, which is an interesting holiday for you to think about. It rotates around the calendar. It uses a lunar calendar similar to how the Jews have Hanukkah and Passover changing dates every year, but the Muslims do not calendar correct for the lunar calendar. They continue to follow it. So every year, their holidays move to different seasons. Whereas for the Jews, I think it's 3 or 4 years, they do a calendar correction that allows them to keep their holidays in the same month approximately, but not the same dates. So right out of the gate, if we're looking at December this year, there is no Ramadan. I did not find a Muslim holiday for December, but if there is one, I hope someone will share it in Facebook or into our Zoom meeting. But what we do have, we have Hanukkah and Christmas. We have 2 pagan holidays, Yule and Saturnalia. We have a Japanese New Year celebration that happens on the 31st of December called Omisoha. I think I'm saying that right. It's the last day of the year, and it is a shrine cleaning holiday. We have the Fiesta of Guadalupe, which is celebrated in Mexico, the Feast of St. Lucia or Lucia in Sweden, and then Kwanzaa, which is the popular African-American celebration that features the African-American celebration of community and a 7-day set of feasts and commitments that are about bringing some of the African tradition into the American experience. Solstice is a holiday that we celebrated in my family. Of course, solstice is the half-year change between seasons. We added solstice to our family holiday after my family experienced my divorce. It was an opportunity for me to start something from scratch with my adult children that felt brand new. So we still celebrated, we typically celebrate Christmas in my family. We still celebrated that, but we added a new holiday celebration of solstice. I've written some about that on the blog. What I discovered by examining other holidays, even holidays outside of our tradition, is that I provided us with an opportunity to create a global awareness that is sometimes missing when we're lost in the myopia of our own culture's hurry scurry to buy and wrap presents or prepare food. Now, buying and wrapping presents is wonderful, can be a fantastic way to help children think of other people, to make presents look beautiful, to learn how to wrap paper is an important skill. But it's not all that's going on in December. So one of the ideas I have for you in this sort of go slow to go fast is maybe in addition to whatever holiday you're celebrating with your family that is familiar and well expressed and well told, maybe look out a side door at another holiday celebration. Get to know Hanukkah, be interested in Kwanzaa, celebrate the St. Lucia feast, maybe be interested in New Year's celebrations that happen in Japan. Give yourself an opportunity to compare and contrast during December. That's a very valuable high-level thinking skill. You know, we are so interested in mastering content, we sometimes forget about the higher order thinking skills. And here December provides us with this perfect opportunity to go slow, to go fast. I remember doing a deep dive into the understanding of Kwanzaa one year, finding that really rich, helping me understand a community that is resurrecting a kind of spiritual practice that is both contemporary and harkens back to the ancient. These are all ways to help you enrich and take advantage of the holidays, as opposed to treating the holidays as this additional burden on top of homeschooling. What you'll discover is you're going to examine calendars. You're going to learn about historical figures and how they established the precedent or tradition for these historical events that became religious celebrations. You're going to learn from the older members of your community. And I highly recommend interviewing grandparents or aunts and uncles, or seeking out the religious leaders in a community to understand the role these holidays actually play in that community's experience, whether religious, secular, or pagan. I think it's also important to understand that these celebrations are a tradition of honoring. And so when we are spending time looking at history, looking at literature, looking at cultural tradition, all of it comes from a sense of wanting community to honor a memory, a principle, or a practice. A memory, a principle, or a practice. Why is this important? Because education at its core is about those things. It's carrying forward important principles, information, the legacy of experts, and it's putting those into practice and honoring the value that comes from those who went before us so that we can carry that into the future and build on it. Religious traditions, holidays, secular traditions, holidays, all of those are trying to express meaning into the world. And when we're working on math or we're working on literature, those are not unmoored. They are not separate from the cultural cache that we're building together, a community identity, a sensitivity to the values that we hold dear. Politics comes right out of all of that. And sometimes we treat them like they are all segregated from each other, as though politics and religious holidays are not related. As though a secular answer to a religious holiday isn't a meaningful contribution to the great conversation we're trying to have about how we establish values in our society. Now, you're not going to talk about all of that with a 6-year-old, but you might talk about some of that with a 16-year-old. So if you're worried that all I'm talking about here is having cookie cutouts and figuring out how to make place cards with your small children and what costume to wear for Halloween, all of this can be taken to a deeper and more intimate level with teenagers. And we can ask them to exercise that higher level of thinking, comparing and contrasting, becoming interested in what is unfamiliar, and then using what is familiar as a reference point, not as a verdict. The goal isn't to judge one as better or worse than the other, but to create a sense of understanding and honoring, if you will, of the community we find ourselves in. Make sense? So the first principle then is less is more. And you can use the continent of learning if you like, found on page 27 in the chapter called Magic Doors in the Brave Learner. You can download the guide, the companion guide at theBraveLearner.com, and you'll find a blank template to use for the continent of learning. So that's another thing you can go get. So less is more is simply paying attention to where your child's interest is right now related to the holidays and building off of it, asking good questions, going on an internet rabbit trail hunt, allowing the subjects to be expressed through that holiday, whether it's measuring, basketball shots or looking at the calorie count and sugar content in candy. My mom, for Halloween, my mom, just as a side note, she used to pay us to give her our candy. So we would save the pieces we wanted. And then she would say, I'll give you $5 for this much, or $1 for this much, or I'll buy that piece of candy off you for $0.25. It was awesome. It was this major negotiation, and we would be making all these internal calculations about how much candy did we want to keep, what was worth the money. This is what I'm talking about. Creating a relationship between the school subjects and real life as it's presenting itself. So that's less is more. Secondly, go slow to go fast. Take your time, anticipate the holiday way in advance. Start building the imagination of your child. Show them who's coming. Talk about where you're going. See which holidays match up or which ones are really different. Look at how different cultures celebrate your same holiday. How does Christmas look in New Zealand versus the United States? How does it look in the Eastern Orthodox Church versus your local, coffee house, modern evangelical church? What are the essentials that are similar? What are the differences that each place chooses to create a different experience, to maximize a different principle? And then look at the wider lens. If you are a person who always celebrates Hanukkah, maybe look at solstice or Saturnalia and give yourself a chance to imagine that there are other traditions, and then compare and contrast. Maybe participate if you are welcome to do that. Then the third principle that I want to give you then, and the final one, is collaborate. Collaborate. It is really hard to get through the holidays and homeschool alone. So what do I mean by collaboration? Well, first of all, many of you have local friends. So get together and do this stuff together. If you're going to make Halloween costumes from scratch, pick a day, have everyone over, bring a potluck lunch, let the kids play in the backyard so they can come in and out for costume fittings. So decorate, do it together. Turn it into a big celebration of the holiday, not something you're dreading that's going to overpower you. Another way to collaborate is through email or Voxer or on Facebook Instant Message, maybe through direct message on Instagram. Find your people, 2 or 3, and trade ideas. You don't all have to live in the same town. You can say, I was doing some research on Hanukkah. Here's what I found. Why don't you do research on solstice, and you do research on the Fiesta of Guadalupe? And then we're all going to just take advantage of the fact that 3 people did research. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. And then I'm going to spend a week where each day with my kids, I'm going to look at each of these holidays just for fun. We're going to do a little history. We're going to make a little sweet treat. We're going to talk about who and where these holidays are celebrated, and we're going to enjoy that learning experience. But don't put it all on your back. Get in a group and do it together. Divide up the tasks and benefit from each other. Another way to collaborate, of course, is during this season. Let's say you want to get math done anyway. You know, you're not just going to study holidays. You are going to actually make forward progress in handwriting, make forward progress in math. Well, you can do this in community. You can collaborate by saying to your friend, all right, you're good at math, I'm good at writing. How about for the week before the holiday that I'm celebrating is coming, I would love it if you could create some kind of math experience for my kids that I don't have to think about, that would be engaging and enlivening. And I'm going to think about some kind of writing project I can do with your kids. So you can do some swapping to help enrich this period, so that on a week, the week that your mother is arriving and your aunt and your uncle and everybody is going to be moving into your house, you can farm the kids out for a few hours to have a math experience that covers the kinds of stuff you want to cover with somebody who knows math well. Meanwhile, after your holiday is over and your family goes home, now you're going to do the same for this friend while she goes gift shopping for her upcoming Hanukkah. And you have time, so you're going to do all of the writing that week, and you're going to have the kids come to your house and turn it into a party of writing. By the way, the 7-day writing blitz, which is a free download on Brave Writer, would be a perfect thing to use. It's all playful, it's all writing, and you can do it as a group. Does this make sense? So collaboration. Now, of course, one of the ways you can collaborate with writing, particularly if you've got junior high, senior high kids and you're worried that they need to complete something like a writing project, an essay, you want to make sure that they have some experience of writing that is more than place cards and free writes. Well, of course, Brave Writer has online classes, and those classes run through the holidays. But here's the great news. They are asynchronous. So you don't have to worry about logging in at a special time. We also accommodate the holidays. So if your family is celebrating Hanukkah and it's happening during one of our classes, you're free to take a little longer, let the instructor know, miss a due date. We will accommodate you through the holidays so that you do not feel that you are somehow getting behind or missing out on a key part. So let's recap the whole session now, okay? First, less is more. Less is more. Identify the holiday that's coming and deep dive on some aspect of it. So if your child is picking a certain character that they want to play for the Halloween experience or at the fall festival, work on it now. Don't wait until October 28th. Allow yourself to check out books from the library related to that character. Maybe you have a child who wants to play someone historical. I remember when Jacob decided to be President George W. Bush for Halloween. Well, that was an opportunity. We checked out books from the library in the nonfiction children's section and read about him, learned about him. So pick whatever that person's character is and allow it to inform some of the choices you make now. Documentary, watching a sporting event, seeing the movie, figuring out the fairy tale it's adjacent to. Now, if your child just picks a theme, like I want to be a pioneer girl, perfect, read Caddy Woodlawn. Your son wants to be a juggler, great, let's look up the history of juggling. There is always a way to research and deep dive into whatever it is your child wants to do. Okay, so for Halloween coming up, that's something you can do. Dia de los Muertos, if that's something you'd like to celebrate or always do, well, now's the time to start collecting photos, maybe even videotape. Dedicate an evening to really reminiscing. Maybe have each child do a little presentation on the history of this person that was dearly loved in the family and the way that person now gone paved the way for the life you're leading today. That's literally doing historical research. It is the exact kind of history work any of us do who major in the field and go off to college or grad school. Okay, so that's less is more. Zero in, give it full attention, start early. Go slow to go fast. Choose not to be in a rush for the school subjects. Choose not to be in a rush for the holidays. Celebrate the one that you always celebrate, and then compare and contrast it with one other that's outside your tradition, and use that as a point of divergence to drive conversation and new appreciation for both, for your own tradition and for this other tradition. And then finally, collaborate. Don't go it alone. Get a friend online, assign out all the things. Oh my gosh, I want to learn more about these holidays. I want to understand better some recipes that will refresh my Thanksgiving. I want to have new ways to decorate that involve the littlest to the oldest. Assign it out. Find people online to collaborate with. If you are lucky enough to have local friends, pick a day. Have a full day where you're doing prep for the holiday together. Put the kids in the backyard, make a great lunch, sew costumes, prepare all of the decorations, consider making the place cards. I remember Dottie Christensen of, chapter 1 of The Brave Learner, my mentor. She used to always do a Christmas ornament workshop at her house. So she would have 8 or 10 stations. Parents with the kids would come over. Each station had a list of instructions, and we made homemade ornaments and took those back to our homes. Now, I would not recommend doing that alone. Dottie is, she's up here in the creativity level. Get 3 friends. Each of you provide 3 stations, invite other friends, and come and make the ornaments. Do you see where I'm going here? Turn these experiences into homeschooling. Collaborate, go slow to go fast, and take a less is more attitude. And I promise you, the holidays are going to be easy. For those of you who love the idea of having us teach writing during the holidays, and trust me, our online classes are the bomb. They're phenomenal. Check out bravewriter.com/online-classes, or just go to the homepage, bravewriter.com, scroll to online classes. Thanks for joining me today. And if you're interested in more webinars like this in your life, the Homeschool Alliance is the place to do it. Check out bravewriter.com. You will see a link to that as well. Bye, everybody. Happiest of holidays to you. Fall in the north is a beautiful time, and I'm sure it is also wonderful in the encroaching summer of the Southern Hemisphere. See you later, everyone.